Strategic insights are one of the hardest things to get right in advertising. The concept of them can be really hard to wrap your brain around, especially in the beginning, and it's really easy to find a boring insight but not realize that what you have is boring. So I'm gonna break it all down. In this video, I'll talk about what insights actually are. We'll look at the difference between an observation and an insight. We'll talk about what makes an insight strong enough to use for advertising, and we'll look at a few examples. If you're a creative, you might be thinking, why do I need to know about insights? Don't strategists do that part for me? Sure, sometimes. In an agency setting, you'll most likely have a strategist who is responsible for making the creative brief that includes an insight that you will then work off of when you go into concepting. But there are some agencies out there that don't have strategists, and there are some mediocre strategists out there. So there will probably be times when you get handed a brief that has a lackluster insight or no insight at all. So it'll be up to you to find something interesting enough to build your ideas on. And if you're someone who is currently working through their portfolio or creating spec work, chances are you don't have a strategist helping you with that either. Now let me be clear, I am not a strategist. I'm a creative. But learning how to think strategically, especially when it comes to insights, is what I think made me a better creative and helped me stand out to agency leadership early on in my career. So while I think this video would be helpful for anyone in any role at an agency, just know that I'm coming at it from a creative's perspective. So an actual strategist might disagree with me or have a different process, and that's okay, because like anything in this industry, it's all subjective. And insights are one of those things that just doesn't have a concrete definition or process, so everyone does it a little differently. Just absorb what you can, take what you like, leave what you don't. So what the heck is an insight? Everyone has a different definition, but the most common one I've heard is a human truth. It's something emotional, behavioral, psychological that is innately true among your audience or the group of people you're focusing on. It's not made up. You're not crafting this out of nowhere. You're finding insights. You're stumbling upon insights. You're connecting different data points or research to write an insight. Here are some other definitions that might help you understand what an insight is. It's common knowledge looked at from a surprising new direction or perspective. It's why people do the things they do. It's not the data itself, but why the data is the way it is. One of the key takeaways from all of those definitions is relatability. An insight is what you're going to use in your advertising to connect and relate with your audience. An insight gives you something to focus your communications on to help your audience see themselves within your brand or product. You know when you're listening to a stand-up comedian and they tell a joke or a story and it makes you think, oh my God, that's so true. An insight is what made you think that. They are using insights to connect to their audience. Now, they're communicating those insights in a really funny way, but they're still using these inherently true things about being a human or society or culture and getting you to connect to their joke. You have to find something equally as interesting when you're working in advertising. You want to center your ad around a human truth that would get someone to think, oh my God, that's so true. Or, wow, I didn't think of it that way. Here are a few examples of insights. People don't realize how bad it is to be out of milk until they're already out and really need it. And I'm sure you're familiar with the campaign that insight resulted in. Another example of an insight. Not every person who exercises or plays sports is trying to be the best. They just want to be their best selves. And that insight resulted in an incredible campaign from Nike called Find Your Greatness. Surface level insights are one of the main reasons I'm even making this video. I have seen far too many briefs with insights that are boring, uninteresting, and surface level. Ones that don't make me say, wow, I didn't think of it like that, but instead make me say, well, duh. Here are some of the most overused, uninteresting, surface level insights. Millennials value experiences over things. People just want to be original. People are bombarded with choices. Moms are busy and on the go. The world is more divided than ever. All of those make me say, no shit. And something that makes you say, duh, is not the right place to start when you're trying to come up with creative ideas. You need something with a little bit more meat to it. When you're trying to find an insight, it's totally okay to start with a surface level insight, but then you gotta dig deeper. You gotta ask yourself questions about that insight and dig and find something more meaningful and interesting and something that would make you say, wow, I didn't think of it that way. For example, if I received a brief with an insight that said, people want to be original, I would have no idea where to start concepting with that. It's so high level, general, vague, boring. But let's try to make it more interesting. Say we're working on something that's related to style. I'm going to dig deeper on that surface level insight. I want to make that more specific to the world of style. I want to dig into the emotions of style, the emotion of wanting to be original, the behaviors that people have when it comes to trying to be original with their style. I'm going to dig into all of that, research all that, ask myself all kinds of questions about it, and come to something like, when it comes to style, people are so dedicated to being and looking different that they're willing to wear things others have deemed ugly or out of style. And that could be a great insight to start from if I were working for Crocs. One little tip for digging into these human truths and making them more interesting is to forget the brand. Most of the time, a strong insight is something that would still be true even if the brand you're working on didn't exist. 9 times out of 10, the strongest insights are going to be things that are about humans, about society, about culture, not about your specific brand or product. Thinking about the industry of your brand or product is totally fine, but if you have the name of your brand or product in the insight that you're working on, try stripping it out of there and seeing if that helps you dig a little deeper. One common mistake when trying to identify an insight is to land instead on an observation. An observation is a great place to start, but the good insight is buried within that observation. Julian Cole is an awesome strategist in the industry. He has super helpful content here on YouTube and his other channels, so if you want to dive deeper into strategy, I highly recommend checking out his content. But he simplified this idea of observation versus insight in a really succinct way. He said observations look at what people do, while insights explain why they do it. And one easy way to get to an insight is by writing because after the observation. When you try to get to the why, you'll probably find an insight. Here's an example of an observation. People don't wear sweatpants out of the house. That's something people do. But why do they do that? Well, maybe they're embarrassed. Maybe it's because they don't feel put together when they wear those out in public. Or maybe if you're thinking about the emotions of it, it makes them feel sloppy or lazy. And that insight led to a campaign for Fruit of the Loom called Get Comfortable with Success. They created a limited edition line of sweatsuits called the Professionals Collection. They said, okay, if people are feeling sloppy and lazy and are embarrassed to go out in public in sweats, let's fix it by giving them a whole new kind of sweats that won't make them feel that way. If you think about the observation itself, people don't wear sweatpants out of the house. That emotional, psychological piece is missing. But when you dig into that and you think about the reason behind the observation, the reason why people are not wearing sweatpants, you find something a lot more interesting. Now, the word observation might make you feel like you have to physically observe this thing, and you can, but it can also just be a thing you know is happening or learn is happening through research. You don't actually have to see it with your own eyes. A lot of times, the observation simply comes from the business problem that the client presents you with. For example, for Fruit of the Loom, the clients probably came to the agency and said, we have a problem. No one's buying sweatpants anymore. And then the agency dug into that, maybe through research or focus groups, to try to see why that's happening. Why are people not buying sweatpants? And through all of that research, they probably stumbled upon something that said people wear sweats, just not in public. And then they thought, why? Let's look at another example of going from observation to insight. Think about dating apps. An observation or problem about dating apps is that people are frustrated with these apps. So that's our observation. How do we get to an insight from that? We ask, why? Why are dating apps so frustrating? Well, let's think about the actual content of these apps. The dating pool could be filled with creeps or people you would absolutely not get along with. Could be a whole bunch of duds and a waste of your time. And then thinking about the reputation of these apps. A lot of them feel like they're just dedicated to hookup culture. Like you wouldn't really be able to find a lasting relationship on one of these. And what's really frustrating is when you keep striking out on these dating apps, chances are you still have to keep using these dating apps. So there's a lot of potential insights in there, but let's see how they led to a campaign from Hinge.
Hinge is the dating app designed to be deleted. Oof. When you find someone, forget about Hinge. That's cold. It's a little morbid, but also romantic. So whatever that romance looks like to you, when the chemistry's right, leave Hinge behind. Ooh-wee. Hinge lives for it. You know what I mean.
So remember, if you've landed on an observation, that's great. You are on the right track. Now, just ask yourself questions about that observation. And eventually that'll help you land on a really interesting human truth that we can put a creative spin on and make a really great ad campaign. In the next video, I'll give you some insight into my process for finding these things, give you tips on how to research, and then how to put an insight together based on all of that research. And after that video, I'm gonna be doing a big Q&A because there are so many little complex things when it comes to insights, so much nuance. It's really hard to cover all in one comprehensive video. I've had so many great questions about insights that I want to compile into one video, so if you have any of those, please drop them in the comments and I will write them down for that video. Happy insight hunting!